It was a normal, busy morning at Hoboken Terminal, one of New York's busiest train stations. Commuters rushing to work, the sound of trains arriving and departing filling the air. But in a matter of seconds, this ordinary morning turned into a scene of chaos and tragedy. A commuter train, speeding toward the platform, did not stop. It crashed straight through the terminal, smashing into the wall where hundreds of people waited. One life was lost, more than 100 others were injured, and a community would never forget that day. In this documentary, we will uncover what went wrong, the human errors and safety failures behind this disaster. Stay with us as we take you inside the 2016 Hoboken train crash. Hoboken is a small city of just over 60,000 people, located in the northeastern United States. It sits in New Jersey, only about 7 miles, or 11.5 kilometers, east of Newark, and less than a mile, or 1.5 kilometers, from New York City, just across the Hudson River. Hoboken Terminal sits at the eastern edge of the city, right on the banks of the Hudson River. With 9 platforms and 18 tracks, it is a dead-end station, the final stop for trains coming into Hoboken. Today, Hoboken Terminal is one of North America's busiest train stations. Every day, more than 50,000 people pass through its doors, with around 16,000 of them travelling by train. Most of these services are run by NJ Transit, New Jersey's public transportation authority, keeping the city connected to the wider region. The train involved in the Hoboken crash was Pascack Valley Line train number 1614, running from Spring Valley, New York to Hoboken. On that morning, the train had 4 cars. At the front was a cab car, a passenger car with a small driver's cab, followed by 2 regular passenger cars, and a locomotive pushing from the rear. The 3 passenger cars were Alstom Comet V models, with the cab car number 6036 leading the train. Using a cab car at the front of the train is a common practice. It allows the train to operate efficiently without moving the locomotive to the other end for the return journey. At the time of the accident, train 1614 was carrying around 250 passengers, along with a crew of 3, all heading into Hoboken for the morning commute. On the morning of September 29, 2016, Pascack Valley Line train number 1614 departed Spring Valley, New York at 7:23 a.m. Cab car first, under the command of 48-year-old Mr. Gallagher. There was no automatic train control on this line. It was entirely up to the engineer to watch signals and follow instructions to maintain safe speeds. For most of the journey, everything was normal. The train made its usual stops, carrying passengers quietly along the line. But as the train approached Hoboken Terminal at 8:38 a.m., something was very wrong. People on the platform began to notice the speed. The train was coming in far too fast for the dead-end track. In a matter of seconds, cab car number 6036 smashed through the rigid buffer at the end of the track. The steel structure was ripped from the ground as the train mounted the platform, still moving at 21 miles per hour or 34 kilometers per hour. The train didn't stop at the platform. Cab car number 6036 tore across the station, crashing through a wall and continuing across the concourse. It finally came to rest against the wall separating the concourse from the waiting area. The force of the impact damaged walls and roof supports, causing part of the station's roof to collapse. A massive steel beam fell through the cab car's roof, leaving a scene of destruction in its wake. In total, 110 people were injured, most of them passengers on the train. Tragically, a woman waiting on the platform was struck by falling debris and lost her life at the scene. Despite the crash, the cab car itself remained largely intact as it tore through the buffer stop and smashed through the first wall into the second. But falling pieces of the station roof caused severe damage, ripping open much of the cab car's roof. The station was immediately closed after the accident as authorities feared more of the roof might collapse around the damaged section. The train's engineer, Mr. Gallagher, survived, though he sustained injuries. In interviews with investigators shortly after the crash, he couldn't recall anything being wrong with the train. His memory skipped from the moment he approached the station to when he regained consciousness on the floor of the cab. After the accident, investigators found no evidence of any technical malfunction. They recovered the first of 2 data recorders the day after the crash, but it was too damaged to provide useful information. The backup recorder could only be retrieved after the train was removed from the station, days later, leaving investigators to wait for the critical data that would explain exactly what happened. Data recovered from the train's backup recorder revealed a crucial detail. Just 1 minute before the accident, the train was travelling at 8 miles per hour or 13 kilometres per hour, safely within the 10 mile per hour or 16 kilometre per hour speed limit. But only 22 seconds later, the train accelerated to 21 miles per hour or 34 kilometres per hour, even though the speed limit was still in effect. An emergency stop was finally triggered, but it came just 1 second before the train went off the rails. The data made one thing clear: the engineer, Mr. Gallagher, was responsible for the crash. Yet a bigger question remained. Why had he acted this way? Investigators looked deeper into Mr. Gallagher's medical history. He had passed his most recent medical examination just 2 months before the crash, in July 2016, but the records were incomplete. During that exam, the doctor had noted symptoms of sleep apnea, a condition where a person's breathing stops and starts during sleep. This interrupts the restorative phases of sleep, leaving the person chronically tired and unfocused. Over time, untreated sleep apnea can even cause micro-sleep. Brief moments where the patient can fall asleep for a few seconds without realising it. NJ Transit has a system to refer drivers showing symptoms for specialised sleep studies. But in Mr. Gallagher's case, there was no evidence that he was ever advised to undergo further testing. 5 days after the accident, Mr. Gallagher underwent a full physical examination and a detailed sleep study. For the first time, his weight was officially recorded: 322 pounds or 146 kilograms, revealing that he was morbidly obese. Why this detail had been missing from his earlier medical exam could not be determined. The sleep study also confirmed a severe case of obstructive sleep apnea, or OSA. In this form of the condition, excess tissue in the throat blocks the airways during sleep, rather than a neurological issue causing breathing pauses. Investigators examined the train's data recorder again and spoke with passengers and crew. They uncovered several small but telling mistakes made before the accident. For example, the engineer either skipped or delayed sounding the mandatory horn at level crossings. There was no evidence of radio conversations or phone use while on duty. These errors pointed to a deeper problem: a lack of focus, likely caused by the effects of undiagnosed sleep apnea. By the time the train reached Hoboken Terminal, Mr. Gallagher's attention had deteriorated so severely that he moved the throttle in the wrong direction. Instead of slowing, the train accelerated, setting the stage for the devastating crash that would follow. The investigation didn't stop, with Mr. Gallagher authorities also reviewed the medical records of the train's other crew members. They found that both the conductor and the assistant conductor showed signs that should have prompted a referral for sleep apnea testing. Yet neither had ever been referred. The final report concluded that, while Mr. Gallagher's actions directly caused the accident, NJ Transit's failure to follow the recommendations of the Tri-State Medical Society Task Force played a significant role. Had proper referrals, diagnoses, and treatment occurred after the pre-accident physicals, the conditions leading to the crash might have been prevented. Once investigators determined that human error caused the accident, another question came into focus. Why wasn't there an automatic system to stop the train if the driver failed to do so? Positive train control, or PTC, had been in use across the United States for several years. It's designed to automatically slow or stop trains to prevent accidents. The Rail Safety Improvement Act of 2008 required all intercity and commuter rail operators to have PTC installed by December 2015. That deadline was later extended to 2018, with the possibility of a 2-year extension if certain preparation milestones were met. Yet, at Hoboken Terminal, PTC was nowhere to be found. Investigators discovered that at least 35 passenger train stations in the US with dead-end platforms like Hoboken had successfully requested exceptions from the PTC deadline. In other words, they were not equipped with the system, and no plans existed to install it. NJ Transit had classified Hoboken Terminal's 20 dead-end tracks as other than mainline track. They argued that permanent red signals and the low speed limits were enough to ensure trains would stop safely before the end of the tracks. With the PTC exemption in place, Hoboken Terminal's tracks did not follow the no single point of failure principle used by most modern railroads. In other words, one mistake, in this case by the train driver, could lead to a catastrophic accident. After the crash, NJ Transit defended their previous choices, insisting that the safety measures in place had generally been sufficient. But the tragedy prompted immediate changes. The speed limit for trains entering the terminal was cut in half, down to just 5 miles per hour, or 8 kilometers per hour. In addition, regulations now require at least one more crew member in the cab whenever a train pulls into the dead-end tracks. According to NJ Transit, these measures are designed to prevent a single human error from ever causing a similar accident again. One final detail caught the investigators' attention. Hoboken Terminal was still using the original steel and concrete buffer stops installed when the station opened in 1907. A representative from the manufacturer explained that this design was considered sufficient, but only under the assumption that trains would be rolling slowly or braking as they approached the end of the track train. Number 1614, however, was under full power when it struck the buffer stop. The force ripped the structure from the ground and carried it along for the rest of its path through the terminal. The report notes that a more modern design, featuring hydraulic dampers or sliding mechanisms, could have absorbed the impact and slowed the train more safely. Such systems reduce the chance of overruns while preventing sudden stops that could harm passengers. The downside? These modern buffer stops require more space, which can reduce the usable length of the platform, a trade-off between safety and practicality. The investigation into the Hoboken Terminal crash was still underway when a nearly identical accident occurred just months later. On the morning of January 4, 2017, at the Atlantic Terminal in Brooklyn, New York City, a commuter train overran the buffer stop, mounted the platform, and crashed into the adjacent wall. In total, 108 people were injured. Once again, the cause was traced back to a fatigued train operator whose inability to focus stemmed from severe undiagnosed sleep apnea. Now, we want to hear from you here. What do you think is more important in preventing tragedies like this? Advanced technology, stricter medical screening, or better human oversight? Could this happen again at other busy stations across the world? Share your thoughts in the comments below.